the rise of API hate during COVID and the negativity and the stereotyping and the violence has just taken a new level, which is unfortunate, but it almost is we're taking a step backwards. We need allies in communities, not just within the API community. We need the API community to speak out and to defend ourselves, to push for more protection, more laws that enforce the hate crime laws of our country. But we also need allies in other communities to stand with us, to voice out the concern, to have better understanding between communities about who we are as APIs in our community. And I think more needs to be done in that regard.
All right. Hello and welcome to another episode of Sacktown Talks. Today, we're glad to be joined by Travis Kiyota of East West Bank, Head of Global Relations. Travis, how's it going? Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Jared. Thank you. Pleasure to have I'm really honored to have you invite me to your show.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for taking the time. I guess for our listeners who don't know who you are, can you kind of give us a little background about yourself and how you got into politics?
Yeah, my family's been in politics for a long time. I can remember my parents being involved in the San Francisco political scene, and as a young kid going to fundraisers and being at famous people's houses and just kind of being around it all my life. And after I graduated from college at UCLA, I decided to jump into it and follow those footsteps and start working for politicians in Los Angeles, and then went to DC and came back and just been a part of politics all of my professional life.
Yeah. And I recall kind of talking with you, you kind of really, I guess, cut your teeth in, I guess, at least California politics was working for Mayor Willie Brown. Is that right? In San Francisco?
Yeah. So I actually started working in Los Angeles for the mayor of Los Angeles for a couple of years straight out of college. My mentor was, and boss was J.D. Nielsen, who was Senator Cranston's chief of staff and became deputy mayor of Los Angeles. And she hired me. And from there, I went to DC and worked at the U.S. Justice Department and helped the president with his, President Clinton with his community policing program and his drug courts program, and traveled the country, meeting great mayors and police chiefs across the country to help implement public safety programs. And after 3 years of DC and trying to cut my teeth there, Mayor Brown got elected in San Francisco. And I decided to go home and work for the legend and kind of really understand San Francisco politics better and really help him implement his vision to changing and uplifting my hometown community.
Yeah, that's something, I guess, those are some big personalities you worked for, going from Bill Clinton to Mayor Brown. Kind of, can you share with us, I guess, some memorable times working with Mayor Brown? I know there's probably a lot, but, your guy's always full of good stories. I bet he passed on a lot of good wisdom to you daily.
Yeah, Mayor Brown obviously was a legend, or is a legend, and just really is I think, a role model in of understanding the dynamics of the environment around you. And what I learned from him is to understand everything going into decisions and remembering everything. The mayor was obviously super smart and always remembered every detail, no matter what. And he didn't need notes. He understand the decision at hand. He understood the facts, and he would ask a lot of questions, deliberate, and make a decision. And I learned from him on the need to understand everything going into a decision, asking a lot of questions, remembering everybody's name, remembering every fact, and then make bold decisions and sticking by them. And I appreciate that about him.
Yeah. We have a lot of staff who listen to this show. Can you talk about how you made the leap from, working for Mayor Brown to kind of going and working kind of in the corporate field and kind of doing a little more government relations stuff?
Yeah. Thanks for that question. After I left Mayor Brown's office, or as I was thinking about leaving Mayor Brown's office after 3 years, I decided that it was time to make a shift and wanted to try my hand at corporate government relations. And so out of San Francisco City Hall, I went to a company called RCN, which was the telecom company in the San Mateo County area and starting to get into the Bay Area market. And they were looking for an executive to help them implement their government relations and their community relations efforts. And so I went over there as a one-person team, essentially, starting to broker franchises and started to work with local government officials across the 9 Bay Area counties to really help them build their infrastructure. I cut my teeth on learning the dynamics around regulatory efforts, overseeing telecommunications, the franchise issues in cities, and learning the dynamics of working closely with local officials to do all of those things. So that's where I started, and from there had the opportunity to move over to PG&E, where I was part of the government relations team, and then led the government relations team after 17 years. Toward the end, led the entire organization on the local and community relations side, and then after that, ended up here at East West Bank. So it's been a 2-decade time almost in corporate, or 2-decade time now in corporate government relations.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So, some of these like corporate heads, you're in charge of a state or a region. You're in charge of the entire globe here with East West Bank. Can you kind of talk about kind of the scope and kind of what the things you're looking at and working on?
I wouldn't say the entire globe, but it's certainly global intentions and global dynamics. East West Bank is a $63 billion asset bank. We are based here in Los Angeles, and we are a United States bank founded initially in the heart of Los Angeles as Chinatown, when other banks wouldn't give Asian Americans bank accounts. And so we are truly a minority bank. That's why we were founded. And since that time, starting as a tiny community savings and loan, under this leadership, under the CEO, we've grown to become the largest independent bank in Southern California, within the top 30 in the country, and now a $63 billion publicly traded minority bank. And so I'm proud to work for this bank. And we have presence in a lot of other countries. Our niche is in Asia as well as the United States. Mm-hmm. We have branches in 7 states and operations in 7 states of the US, and then have presence in Asia. And we are essentially that bridge between economies between the East and the West. And this past year, and going into this year, my CEO, Dominic Ng, was appointed by President Biden to lead the Business Advisory Council for the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, which is the global economies of the APEX region that meet with other heads of states like the United States, the President of the White House, as well as France and Mexico and Canada. And they convene every year. And this year they're convening right here in California, San Francisco. So through that effort, certainly my efforts supporting East West Bank has turned global, and in the economies of the country that really are the largest GDPs in the world. And so that has really opened my eyes to the larger nature of how our larger globe works when it comes to economies and relationships and dynamics.
Yeah, and definitely interesting times, kind of dealing with all that, with all the, kind of struggles everyone's coming out of COVID-19 and kind of all the banking issues. Kind of what, at these conferences, kind of what are the people talking about, and kind of what's on front of mind of these kind of leaders when you're discussing things?
Yeah, this year's focus that since the United States is hosting, and President Biden and the White House are hosting this year's summit in November, where these national global economies convene, their heads of states convene. The focus is going to be around sustainability and inclusion, and really how the economies around the APEX region can work together on sustainability. And so while this year the teams are all working, the countries are all working together to find common solutions, common ideas, common practices, and those will be developed over this next year. It's really around how it's a very small world when it comes to the environment. Right. And then on the inclusion part, it's about how those that may have been left out in solutions of the economy, in the global economy, how to include them, whether they be women or underserved communities or minorities or indigenous populations. How do we bring them into the thriving economies of the world, and how do we ensure that the economies work together, whether it be on solutions on sustainability or others? How do all those populations partake in that as we move forward?
Right. Previously you talked about how, you were, working for PG&E, and, I bet you could write a master class on government relations from your time with PG&E. Can you kind of talk to us about your time with PG&E and kind of some of the things you learned while working there?
Well, I will say at PG&E, um, I learned professional public affairs, professional government relations. It was where I was trained in corporate government relations, and I'll always remember that and the experiences I had there. I won't go into details of all the work that I did there, but I will say that I worked with a lot of good people that are trying to do the right thing in the government relations team, in the community relations team, that are committed to the community, that really understand politics, that really understand local communities, and that we're striving to transform the company into a clean energy company, and to really migrate from the transition of a clean energy future. On the community relations side, I would say that companies like PG&E invest heavily into the community, and I was humbled and honored to be part of that effort, to really be part of the fabric of communities, to transform the nature of how a utility can be part of diverse communities, whether they be the API community or the African American, Latino, LGBT community. Mm-hmm. Under my tenure, that's what we did. That's what was my intention, is to really be part of the fabric of our state, as well as to ensure that we had a very diverse, robust, smart public affairs team that, once I was trained in it, that I could help train other diverse leaders in our public affairs space to really become a truly professional public affairs organization within a corporation like PG&E.
Mm-hmm. With your kind of role at East West Bank, you kind of have a cool dual function, right? You can work on public policy and government relations strategy, but you're also working on the East West Foundation. Can you kind of talk about how these, kind of two roles work together? Often companies separate these, but, this is something you get to do together.
That's true. Most companies do separate them, and I'm fortunate that my CEOs decided to have me lead both. In fact, I lead the government relations, the charitable contributions, and the brand marketing. And those three entities, I think, all come together to help tell our story about who we are as the nation's largest minority bank and a strong financial performing bank based in California and operating in the global economy. I think with my role, I'm able to understand where policymakers are at, understand the priorities of our communities, and through our charitable contributions, align our values about uplifting underserved communities, about educating communities through arts and education, through investing in economic development or small businesses. That's where we align our community vision through our charitable contributions effort, where I'm the president of the East West Bank Foundation, match with our efforts around our public affairs efforts to engage in our elected officials' priorities and to understand where our country, where our cities, where our communities are going, and then to overlay that with telling our story through our brand marketing efforts. So all those come together, I think, make a lot of sense, and I'm glad my CEO has given me the opportunity to lead that larger strategy.
No, definitely does. And, probably going to create a new model for other corporations to follow. We've had Bill Wong on before, and, a couple weeks ago or years ago, the last 2 years have been, the rise of Asian hate crimes, a lot of API hate crimes, a lot of things you're seeing in the media with regards to API hate. Kind of what are the things you see as a challenge out there for the communities you serve, and kind of what's East West Bank doing to kind of help address some of these issues?
Thanks for that question. Unfortunately, API hate has just obviously become much more prevalent and much more in your face. But I don't think it's ever really truly gone away. We've seen that from the Chinese Exclusion Act. We've seen that in our country's history with Japanese American internments, which my own grandparents were interned. And we see, from Vincent Chin to all of the other things that have gone on in this country. And then with the rise of API hate during COVID, and the negativity and the stereotyping and the violence has just taken a new level, which is unfortunate, but it almost is, we're taking a step backwards. And I think we need more. We need allies in communities, not just within the API community. We need the API community to speak out and to defend ourselves, to push for more protection, more laws that enforce the hate crime laws of our country, as this president has done. But we also need allies in other communities to stand with us, to voice out the concern, to have better understanding between communities about who we are as APIs in our community. And I think more needs to be done in that regard. I also think we need to strengthen our community nonprofits and our institutions to take care of our community as other communities do. And with that, East West Bank Foundation last November during Asian American Heritage Month committed upwards of $6 million to initiatives and community efforts to support the API, Asian Pacific American community. And that's our focus as an Asian American organization. And we'll continue to do that, invest in our communities, to strengthen our community, to push for efforts to stop discrimination and hate within our communities, across communities. And we're going to do a lot more of that.
Can you kind of talk about, when you first came into politics and what the late 90s, early 2000s versus today, kind of the rise of, I guess, the API legislator, the API constitutional officer. Can you kind of talk about how that's changed over the last 20 or so years and kind of where you see that's going in the next 10 to 20 years?
Thanks for that question. I'm very proud of the leadership and the efforts around the APIs who want to be in politics, especially in this state. As you said, when I first started in politics, as you know, there wasn't very many of us in this space. And now to see more and more taking office, being involved at the highest levels of the state constitutional officers to new members within the legislature, it's just fantastic, a growing number. I'm also delighted to see the number of Asian American women becoming elected officials in this state, especially now with the California legislature. I think it's important to have that kind of diversity, and I'm proud to see that our community is maturing, becoming more involved within not only the halls of government, but also in roles like mine. We need that to be part of the solution of diversification in politics, and I think that we're starting to do much more of that. So it's great to see friends of mine become such influential policymakers in the state that happen to be Asian American. I think that's just great, and certainly they become more role models for people like my kids, like our future generation.
Right. Travis, you might be one of the best networkers I've ever met. And kind of when you're talking about, the lessons you learned from Mayor Brown about, remembering people's names, remembering details, you are excellent on that. And kind of, I heard that, when you're working with your staff or people you hire, you kind of have a certain list of things that you're saying, this is what I want you guys to do. Can you kind of talk about that? And when you're looking for staff or people to work for you, kind of things you want to pass on to them and things that you want them to achieve, working for you?
Well, I appreciate that. I don't know if I'm the best networker out there, but I've had a lot of good mentors and role models. But I firmly believe that relationships is the bread and butter of our business. And so how you relate to people, how you build a common bond, how you remember things about people, it's important to establish relationships and keep those relationships. And again, that's just the nature of our business. And I've learned a lot about that through my journey in the space. What I look for in people, first, I want smart people. And if I'm who I want to hire, people that get it. And people that understand the nature of the business of relationships, people that are good on their feet, people that are strategic. And then also, as you know, as I said earlier, people that represent our great diversity, because diversity of background, diversity of race, diversity of way of life, and diversity of school of thought. I think that makes a healthy organization. As Mayor Brown told me, I think it's important that you get people that stay aligned to the value of your organization or the person that you work for. So I value the alignment and having the vision that all members of the team agree upon to implement that vision. That's truly been important. I also think it's important to have good relationships with people that work with us, work for me, work with me, or work above me. And I think it's important to foster those kinds of healthy relationships. And now as I, been in the space for a long time, Jared. I think it's really important that I take the opportunity to mentor others, to pay it forward. I've had so many great mentors in my life.
Mhm.
Many of them Asian American, many of them Asian American women who've been great role models for me. And I'd like to pay that forward to ensure that I'm passing on all the values that I've learned through my career in the space.
No, definitely good advice. Hopefully, people hear that and take advantage of it because it's definitely something to do and something that you've lived by and you can see it just kind of in your work. Well, Travis, I know you're busy, you got a lot of stuff to do, but thank you so much for taking the time and joining us. And look forward to seeing what you have in store for November for that summit in San Francisco. It sounds like it's going to be a great opportunity for the state and the city to kind of show the world leaders kind of what we're up to.
Well, thank you so much for having me on your show. Apex is going to be a phenomenal summit with everybody convening in San Francisco. So we're honored, and I'm delighted that the White House picked my hometown to host it. And I think it's an opportunity for California and San Francisco to shine in front of the Apex heads of state. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to seeing you there, and I appreciate you having me on your show.
Awesome. Thanks, Travis. We'll talk to you
Okay,
later.
take care.
Thanks.
Bye bye.
Bye.